My name is Eliza Hart. I'm 26 years old, and most people, when they see me, just see small, 5'2", slight, the kind of girl who disappears against a crowd. That is how I survived the night shift at the Hudson Diner. It is a 24-hour joint in Jersey City, smelling of old coffee and bleach, a place where the grease clings to the air like the damp winter fog outside. This whole area, stretching down to the ports at Newark, feels damp. It is a cold that gets into your bones, a moisture that carries the sound of the container ships and the distant highway whine right to your ears. I live with my mother and my 17-year-old brother, Noah. Noah is spectrum adjacent, a mild autism spectrum disorder diagnosis that just means he processes the world differently. He does not like surprises, but he loves patterns. In that, we are alike. My other job, the one that pays better but comes less often, is freelance work as an American Sign Language interpreter. I bridge worlds, the hearing and the non-hearing, but I hear things most people do not. It is not magic, it is just focus. While everyone else hears the city as a roar, I hear the individual parts. I hear the broken fluorescent light over booth 4, the one that buzzes at a slightly sharp B-flat. I hear the soda machine's compressor kicking in exactly every 12 minutes. I can tell when the traffic lights down the street change because the electronic crosswalk signal chirps a fraction of a second off beat. The city is full of these tiny, artificial sounds. Lately, they've been getting weirder. These new private security contracts are popping up all over the port infrastructure. They install new systems, public address speakers that click twice before an announcement, artificial intelligence cameras that hum at a frequency that makes my teeth ache, and micro beacons, tiny little transmitters. They are supposed to optimize logistics, but they are polluting the soundscape. They are being misused. I can hear it. Tonight, the rain was not just falling, it was attacking the windows, a hard, cold assault that blurred the neon sign outside into a red smear on the pavement. It was late, maybe 1:40 in the morning. The diner was empty except for 2 booths. In one, near the door, sat a group of 3 men. They were not diner regulars. They wore suits that were too expensive, trying to look casual and failing. They kept their voices low, but the diner's acoustics are all hard tile and glass. I heard them. They were not just talking. They were speaking in code. 2 canaries sing, one of him murmured, stirring his black coffee. "Confirm Bishop at 2:05, the other replied, not looking up from his phone. It was a mix of numbers and sounds, a cadence. It set my teeth on edge. It was like the bad frequencies from the port, the ones that felt wrong. And then there was the man in the last booth. He was alone. He'd been there for an hour, nursing a single cup of black coffee. His back to the corner, he wore a dark, perfectly tailored wool coat, still damp from the rain. He was older than me, maybe 38. There was a stillness to him that did not belong in a roadside diner at this hour. His face was sharp, defined, and he watched the rain as if he was waiting for it to give him an answer. I knew who he was. Everyone in Jersey City knew of him. Matteo Vescari. His public face was Vescari Logistics, a legitimate, massive shipping operation that owned half the container storage near the port. His private face, the one whispered about in places like this, was the Mafia Boss, the old school strategist who ran the shadows of this city with a quiet, lethal precision. He was the last man you expected to see sitting alone, exposed. The men at the front booth were watching him, not directly. They watched his reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser. They watched him in the darkened glass of the window. 2 canaries. Bishop at 2:05. I looked at the digital clock above the grill. 1:41 in the morning. My blood went cold. It was not a conversation. It was a countdown. The bishop was the man in the back booth, Matteo Vescari. 2:05 was not a place. It was a time. 2:05. In 24 minutes, and the 2 canaries, in the old stories, canaries were sent into mines to detect poison gas. They were the warning, or perhaps they were the signal. I felt the hum under my feet. It was coming from the vending machine near the door, the one the men were sitting by. It was not the normal compressor rhythm. It was a staggered beat. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short, 2 long. It was the same rhythm I had heard near the port gates last week, just before a security drill locked the whole place down. It was a signal. It was a beacon. They were activating something. This was a trap. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I picked up the coffee pot, my hand surprisingly steady. I walked toward the front booth, my eyes down. More coffee, gentlemen. The one who spoke first looked up at me. His eyes were flat, empty. We are good, sweetheart. I forced a smile and turned. I walked the length of the diner, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I stopped at the last booth. Matteo Vescari did not look up immediately. He seemed lost in thought. "Sir," I said, holding the pot. He raised his gaze. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and carrying a weight I could not begin to understand. He gave a slight nod. I leaned in, pouring the hot liquid into his cup. The men at the front were talking again, louder this time, covering the sound. My left hand, the one not holding the pot, dropped below the level of the table. My fingers moved, fast and sure, flashing the signs I used every day. LEAVENOW. He did not flinch. His eyes remained locked on mine. I kept pouring. TRAPHERE. I finished pouring and straightened up. His expression had not changed, but I saw something tighten in his jaw. I turned and walked back toward the kitchen. My shift apron feeling like lead. I did not look back. I just waited for the explosion, the gunfire, the sound of the world ending. Nothing. 2 seconds later, I heard the heavy scrape of the booth. I heard the rustle of cash being dropped on the table. I heard his heavy, measured footsteps walking toward the door. He did not run. He walked out, pushing through the glass door into the pounding rain. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I moved to the window, pretending to wipe down a counter. The parking lot was a mess of puddles and weak light. I saw him, a dark shape moving toward a black sedan parked at the edge of the lot. He was almost to his car when the men from the front booth burst out of the diner. "Now," one of them yelled. It happened so fast, a van I had not even noticed, parked across the street, lit up. Its headlights flooded the lot. The sound that came next was not a boom. It was a sharp, terrifying crack. It was the sound of a high velocity round breaking the sound barrier, followed instantly by the sound of the diner window next to my head exploding inward. Small shards of glass sprayed across my face. I screamed and dropped to the floor, my hands flying up to cover my head. Another crack, another. Then the front door was thrown open. For a second, I thought the gunmen were coming back for me. Get up now!" It was his voice, Matteo Vescari. I looked up. He was crouched in the doorway, the rain plastering his black hair to his head. His face was a mask of pure, cold focus. "Move," he commanded. I did not think. I scrambled on my hands and knees, sliding on the shattered glass. He grabbed the front of my apron, hauling me to my feet and pulling me out into the rain. 2 more shots rang out, smacking into the brickwork where I had been standing. "Keep your head down," he yelled, shoving me toward his car. He did not run behind it. He ran at it, keeping his body between me and the van across the street. He pushed me down behind the solid steel of the engine block, shielding me with his own body. The metal of the car was cold and wet against my cheek. "They are pinned," he said, his voice calm in the chaos. He was breathing hard, but he was not afraid. They expected me in the car. He reached into his coat, and for the first time, I saw the gun in his hand. It was black and serious. He did not fire. He just watched. I heard the van's engine roar. Tires squealed, the headlights swung around, and the van sped off down the street, disappearing into the wet darkness. The silence that fell afterward was deafening. There was only the rain, the dripping water, and the sound of my own ragged breathing. We stayed there for a full minute, him kneeling, me huddled against the tire. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was quiet now. I shook my head, though I could feel a small sting on my cheek. "No, I do not think so." He stood up slowly, scanning the street. He offered me his hand. I looked at it for a moment. This was the hand of a man people called a monster, a killer. But it was also the hand that had just pulled me from a line of fire. I took it. His grip was strong, and he pulled me to my feet easily. "How did you know?" he asked. He was not looking at me. He was watching the street, his eyes moving constantly. "I heard them," I said, my voice trembling. "The men inside, they were talking a code." "The code," he said, almost to himself. "What did you hear?" "2 canaries, Bishop at 2:05, and the vending machine. It was ringing. 3 short, 2 long. It was a signal." He finally turned to look at me. The focus was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Disbelief. Calculation. "You heard the beacon," he said. It was not a question. "I hear frequencies," I stammered. "The ones that do not belong." He stared at me, and I felt like he was seeing right through my skin, right into the core of me. "You cannot stay here," he said flatly. "I have to," I said, thinking of my mom, of Noah. "I have to finish my shift. I need the money." He actually let out a short, harsh laugh. "Your shift. They just tried to kill you along with me. They saw your face. They know you warned me." My stomach turned to ice. He was right. "My family," I whispered. "My mom, my brother." "Where are they?" "Home, in the Heights." He pulled out his phone. It was not a normal smartphone. It looked heavier, reinforced. He typed a single message, his thumb moving fast. "They are not safe there. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean they know who I am," he said, "and now they know who you are. They will not stop." I looked back at the diner. My manager, Sal, was probably hiding in the walk-in freezer, calling the cops. The police would come. They would ask questions I could not answer, and the men in the van would come back. Matteo Vescari looked at me. "I have a car coming. It will take you somewhere safe, a safe house. My people will pick up your family and bring them there. You have my word they will not be harmed." "Your word?" I asked, the skepticism sharp in my voice. "The word of, Yes." He cut me off, his voice hard. "My word, right now. It is the only thing standing between your family and the people who just shot at us. You saved my life. Eliza Hart." He knew my name. Of course he knew my name. I was the night shift waitress. He probably knew my social security number. "I have to go with them," I said. "My brother, Noah. He will not go with strangers." "Fine," Matteo said, not missing a beat. "You go with my man, Luca. He will get you. You get your family. He will take all of you to the house, but you have to go, right now." A black Escalade pulled up to the corner, its lights off. It had appeared out of nowhere. This was insane. I was a waitress. I interpreted for the deaf. I took care of my brother, and now I was getting into an armored car with the most dangerous man in Jersey City. But I thought of Noah, sleeping in his bed. I thought of my mom. I looked at the shattered window of the diner. My life, the one that smelled of bleach and old coffee, was gone. It had shattered along with the glass. "Okay," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I will go, but if anything happens to them—" "Nothing will happen to them," Matteo Vescari said. He opened the back door of the Escalade. "You have my word." I got in. I left my apron on the wet pavement. I left my shift, my job, and the entire life I knew behind. I looked at the man getting in beside me, the man they called a mafia boss. I had put my family's safety first. I just prayed I had not put it in the hands of a different kind of monster. The Escalade was silent inside, a vacuum. The only sound was the rhythmic slap of the windshield wipers fighting the rain. I sat rigid, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. Matteo Vescari sat opposite me, not beside me, watching me with that same unsettling focus. The man driving, the one he had called Luca, was built like a refrigerator, but moved with a frightening grace. He had not said a word. We drove to my apartment in the Heights. I ran up the stairs, my heart in my throat, with Luca 2 steps behind me. I burst in the door. My mother was asleep on the couch, the television murmuring. Noah was in his room, headphones on, rocking slightly to a beat only he could hear. "Mom, wake up! Wake up now!" She startled awake, her eyes wide with confusion. "Eliza, what is wrong? It is 2 a.m. We have to go. Right now. Just coats and shoes. Leave everything else." "What? Eliza, you are scaring me. Who is this man?" she asked, seeing Luca fill the doorway. "He is a friend. He is keeping us safe. Please, Mom, just trust me. Get Noah." This was the hardest part. I went into Noah's room and touched his shoulder. He jumped, pulling his headphones off. "Eliza, not time. Schedule says sleep." "I know, buddy, I know. It is a surprise. A trip. We have to go right now." His face began to crumple. The change in routine, the panic in my voice. No trip. Schedule is therapy tomorrow, 10:30, with Dr. Albright. We will make it. We just have to go somewhere else first. Put on your shoes." It took 10 minutes, 10 agonizing minutes of coaxing, of my mother crying silently, of Noah resisting until I finally grabbed his favorite headphones and his weighted blanket. We looked like refugees as Luca herded us down the stairs and into the running Escalade. Matteo Vescari was not there. He was in a different car, a shadow that followed us through the wet streets. We drove for 30 minutes, deep into a part of New Jersey I did not recognize, all sprawling warehouses and dark office parks. We pulled into an underground garage, the steel door rolling shut behind us with a final, heavy thud. The safe house was a luxury apartment on the top floor. It was beautiful, sterile, and cold, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing a city I no longer felt part of. "It is clean," Luca said, his first words to me. "No one knows this location. Food in the fridge. You stay here." My mother sat on a white leather sofa, trembling. Noah went straight to a corner, put on his headphones, and wrapped himself in his blanket. An hour later, as the first gray light of dawn touched the sky, my phone buzzed. I looked at it. A text from an unknown number. "We are confirming Noah's 10:30 therapy appointment with Dr. Albright. Please reply yes to hold his spot." My blood ran cold. I looked at my mother. "Mom, did you get a text about Noah's appointment?" She checked her phone. "No, honey. Why?" I showed her the message. "I am the only one who gets these, and they always come from the doctor's office number. This is not it. They knew his schedule." Before I could even process it, Matteo Vescari walked through the door, along with a woman I had never seen. She was tall, sharp, in a severe dark suit, carrying a leather briefcase. "They just confirmed our fears," Matteo said, his voice grim. He nodded at my phone. "That text was a probe, to see if you were home, to see if we had you." I felt sick. "Who are they?" "This," the woman said, stepping forward, "is Carmen Soto. She's my legal counsel, and she is here to explain just how much trouble we are in." Matteo looked at me. "The men at the diner, the van. They are Bratva, Russian, run by a man named Viktor Malenko, but he is just the muscle, the brain. The thing you heard is a company called Presidium." "Presidium Security," Carmen Soto said, her voice crisp and clear, cutting through the fear in the room. "They are a port security startup. They won a massive Homeland Security contract 6 months ago. They are installing a new smart infrastructure, artificial intelligence cameras, data analysis, and micro beacons." The things I hear. I whispered. "Exactly," Matteo said. "They are using that network to run a shadow operation. Malenko handles the dirty work on the ground, human trafficking, smuggling, extortion. Presidium uses its technology to create blind spots for him, to coordinate his movements, to eliminate his rivals. Like me, they are using the port's own security system as a weapon." "We cannot just go after them," Carmen said. "Manet," placing her briefcase on the glass coffee table. "Matteo's reputation makes him a target, not a credible witness. The police are compromised. The Port Authority is blinded by Presidium's technology. If we are to take them down, it must be with clean evidence. a chain of custody that a federal prosecutor cannot dismiss. She looked directly at me. You're the first link in that chain, your ears. What you heard is the only lead we have that is not tainted. I felt the walls of the beautiful prison close in. I was not just being protected, I was an asset. So what now, I asked. I stay here while you men go fight. Mateo almost smiled. Not quite. You are the only one who can hear them. We need to know what you hear. But it is a two-way street, a bargain. Truth for truth. I hesitated. My whole life, my hearing had been my secret, my party trick, my burden. What do you need? Show me, Ellen, he said. Show me what you do. I took a deep breath. I pulled out my own laptop. It was old, covered in stickers. I opened an audio file. I make these audio podcasts just for myself, to organize the sounds. I played a file. To them, it must have sounded like static. A bus idling, a distant jackhammer, a snatch of music. Just noise, Carmen said, impatient. No, I said. Listen, I isolated a track, a high-pitched whine. That is a faulty transformer on 4th Street, but listen to the rhythm it makes when the crosswalk signal clicks. I played it again, filtering out the bass. The sound was suddenly clear. A pattern. It is Morse code. 6DK. It is the Wi-Fi password for the public library, broadcast by a broken speaker. I played another. This is from the port. I recorded it last week. It was the sound of the security drill, a low pulse, barely audible. 3 short, 2 long, I said, the same rhythm as the vending machine. Mateo leaned forward. The air around him crackled with intensity. The activation signal. I think so, I said. It is the sound they make right before they move. He stared at me for a long moment, then he nodded to Carmen. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. She slid it across the table. Our truth, she said. The screen lit up with surveillance photos. The van from the diner, captured at a gas station 2 days earlier, a license plate number, maps of the port with routes highlighted in red. These are Malenko's known escape routes, Mateo said. These are the license plates of his spotters. He was giving me everything, the keys to his side of the war. I need more, I said, my voice shaking but gaining strength. I need more recordings from the port, from tonight, from before the ambush. I need to find the source of that signal. Carmen was already typing on her phone. We have listening posts. We can get you the raw audio feeds. For the next few hours, I sat at that glass table, my headphones on, shutting out the sterile room, my terrified mother, my brother rocking in the corner. I was adrift in a sea of sound. I listened to hours of port noise, of wind, water, and machinery. And then I found it. It was on a recording from a post near the container yards. Time-stamped 2 hours before the diner ambush. There it was, the 3-2 pulse, faint but unmistakable. I have it, I said, my voice hoarse. I waved Mateo over. I played it for him. He just heard static. I do not, he started. Shh, I said, closing my eyes, concentrating. Listen, underneath it. What do you hear? I filtered the audio, cutting the high frequencies, boosting the low. A deep, resonant hum emerged from the static. It was a steady, powerful thrum. A generator, he asked. No, it is too stable. It is a freezer, an industrial freezer unit. I listened again, my mind racing. The sound was clean. There was no background echo of a building. It is not in a building, I said, my eyes flying open. It is on a truck, a refrigerated truck. That is what I am hearing. The freezer unit, they are mobile. They are running the server out of a truck. A mobile server, a ghost in the system, moving through the one place in the city with thousands of identical trucks. I hated this. I hated being scared. I hated that my family was in danger. I hated being locked in this apartment, a cocoon, as Luca had called it. But as I looked at the audio file, at the digital wave of the sound I had captured, I also felt something else. I felt respect. Matteo Viscari was not looking at me like I was a frightened waitress. Carmen Soto was not looking at me like a liability. They were looking at me like I was the only person in the world who could hunt this ghost. Matteo Vescari, the man who commanded a dark empire, who made decisions that shook the city, leaned toward me. His dark eyes were fixed on my laptop screen. He did not give an order. He did not make a demand. He asked a question. "Where do we find it, Eliza?" He had just ceded control. He was letting me, the girl who heard sounds, lead the hunt, and I knew, in that moment, I would not let him down. We needed a way inside their world, but legally, Carmen found it. 2 days later, I was not Eliza Hart, the diner waitress. I was Elena Russo, a junior analyst for a shell corporation Carmen had spun up in less than an hour. The Port Authority was hosting a Port Modernization and Security Symposium. Presidium was the keynote speaker. My hair was pulled back into a severe bun that made my scalp ache. I wore non-prescription glasses with thick black frames and a gray suit that felt like cardboard. I looked small, smart, and utterly forgettable. It was the perfect camouflage. Matteo Vescari was not there. This was too public, too legitimate for a man with his reputation. Luca Ferri came, however, looking deeply uncomfortable in a suit that was 2 sizes too large for his shoulders, which was saying something. He stayed near the exits, scanning the crowd, his eyes never resting. I walked in alone. Clutching a laptop bag, I sat in the 3rd row, opened my laptop, and plugged in my high-sensitivity microphone, disguised as a simple USB flash drive. The room was cold, filled with city officials and logistics executives, all sipping bottled water and checking their phones. The presentation was exactly as boring as I expected. A man in an expensive suit, the chief executive officer of Presidium, talked for 20 minutes about synergy, proactive optimization, and automated security solutions. My ears were filtering through the drone of his voice, listening to the room. I could hear the hum of the projector, the clicking of keyboards, and the faint, orderly pulse of the active beacons they had installed in the auditorium itself. Then he put up the slide I was waiting for, our beacon deployment strategy. My breath caught. It was a complete map of the entire Newark and Jersey City port complex. The map was covered in small red nodes, showing every beacon they had installed. My fingers flew across the keyboard, taking a high-resolution screen capture. I had their layout. The executive continued, oblivious. Our system is comprehensive. We are streamlining every aspect of port access, right down to our vendor partners. We are even running a pilot program with the Alma restaurant to automate their supply deliveries. The name hit me, Alma. As he said it, I heard a specific click from the speakers. It was not the 3-2 ambush signal. It was a single sharp identifier. They had just named their private back door. The chief executive officer finished and introduced his technical lead. And now for a brief technical demonstration. Here is our lead developer, Ethan Park. A young man walked onto the stage. He could not have been more than 25. His tag identified him, and he looked pale, his hands visibly trembling as he approached the podium. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. "Thank you," he said, his voice thin. "I'm just going to run a quick systems diagnostic to show the network's responsiveness." He typed a command into his laptop. The beacons in the room responded, but it was not a diagnostic code. It was not the 3-2 pulse. It was a melody. It was faint, barely audible under the hum of the air conditioning, but it was unmistakable. He had triggered the beacons to play a sequence of notes. Mary had a little lamb. My head snapped up. I stared at him. He was looking down, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. It was a joke. It was a breadcrumb. It was a sign. This man, Ethan Park, was terrified, and he was deliberately leaving a trail for anyone smart enough, or in my case, sensitive enough, to hear it. That night, back in the sterile white apartment, I presented my findings. Matteo and Carmen Soto sat at the glass table, watching me. "This is the beacon map," I said, projecting the image onto the wall. "Every node they have, and this is the name, Alma. It is a restaurant near the Hoboken waterfront. It is their back door. Good, Matteo said, his eyes tracing the map. We find the truck. We hit it. Wait, Carmen interrupted. There is something else. She looked at me. Tell him about the developer. I hesitated, then played the audio file, the simple, childish melody. His name is Ethan Park. He's a developer at Presidium. He played this during the technical demo. I think he is trying to help us. He is leaving a trail. Carmen shook her head, her expression grim. No, Eliza, he is not helping us. He's baiting us. This is a trap. It is a hearing trap. I did not understand. It is a song. He is scared. I saw his face. He is a developer who broadcast a deliberate, non-encrypted signal in a public forum, Carmen said, her voice sharp and cold. Presidium knows someone is listening. They expect us to be monitoring them. This clue is not for us. It is for a judge. They are baiting us to hack their system using that musical key. The second we do, we have violated every federal wiretapping and computer fraud statute on the books. Everything we find after that is inadmissible. We become the criminals. It is a legal landmine, and you almost stepped right on it. My blood ran cold. She was right. They were not just setting an ambush in the street, they were setting one in a courtroom. The next day, the tension in our group became unbearable. We were not in the apartment. We were in the real Vescari Logistics headquarters, a sleek, modern office in a glass tower overlooking the port. The windows were polarized so dark it felt like permanent twilight. Another man was there. He was older than Matteo, broader, with the same sharp Vescari features. But his energy was all wrong. It was loud, angry, and uncontrolled. "This is my cousin, Adriano," Matteo said, his voice flat. Adriano Vescari did not bother to shake my hand. He just paced in front of the window. "We know they use a refrigerated truck." "Matteo," he said, his voice a low growl that vibrated in my chest. "We know they are Bratva, so we stop this nonsense. We stop treating them like a corporation and start treating them like what they are. We find the truck, we put a hook on it, and we rip the doors off. We find this Victor Malenko, and we make him talk." "No," Matteo said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through Adriano's anger like a knife. "No," Adriano spun around. "They put bullets in a diner. Matteo, they almost killed Luca. They are making us look weak, and you are listening to this. This girl." He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with open contempt. "She is a civilian, a risk. This is Vescari business." "This girl," Matteo said, standing up slowly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Is the only reason I am alive. She's the only reason Luca is not dead. And she is the only one in this room who sees the real threat. It is not Malenko. Adriano. It is Presidium. We cannot beat them with guns. We will lose. We beat them with this." He tapped his temple. "And we beat them with her." Adriano looked from me to Matteo, his jaw tight. He saw a liability. Matteo saw a weapon. I was not sure which one made me feel safer. "We do this Carmen's way," Matteo continued. "Clean, legal, and we start with the lead Eliza gave us, Alma." Alma was a beautiful, expensive Italian restaurant on the Hoboken waterfront, all dark wood, white tablecloths, and the smell of money. "Malenko does not eat here," Luca muttered from the driver's seat as we idled across the street that night. "This is not his style." "No," I said, scanning the building. "The speaker said vendor access. We're not looking at the front, we are looking at the back." We parked 3 blocks away and went on foot. Just the 3 of us, me, Matteo, and Luca. The alley behind the restaurant was a narrow canyon of brick, smelling of stale wine, garbage, and the sharp brine of the Hudson River. It was dark, lit only by a single flickering security light that buzzed in a low G sharp. "There," I whispered, pointing, a heavy, reinforced steel door, the vendor entrance. Matteo nodded at Luca. Luca, silent as a shadow, moved toward it. He reached out, his gloved hand about to test the lock. "Wait." The word was out of my mouth before I even thought. I had gone rigid. "What?" Matteo asked. his voice a low breath. "I hear it," I whispered. My pulse was pounding in my ears, but underneath it, faint and clear, was the sound, the signal, the 3-2 pulse. "It is here. It is an ambush. They are waiting for us." "Where?" Matteo demanded. His hand vanished inside his tailored coat. I closed my eyes, tilting my head, trying to separate the sound from the echo. The signal was clean, but it was bouncing off the narrow brick walls. "Rooftop," I said. "They are high. Sniper." I opened my eyes and scanned the roofline of the building across the alley. Nothing. "I do not see him," Luca whispered, his own gun now in his hand. "No," I said, a wave of cold dread washing over me. "Not that roof. He is on our roof. He's right above us." "Luca, move!" Matteo yelled. Luca dove, rolling away from the steel door just as the first shot rang out. It was not a crack. It was a heavy, suppressed thump. A piece of concrete the size of my fist exploded from the wall, exactly where Luca's head had been a second before. He was pinned. The sniper had the angle. He was trapped against the wall. "I cannot get an angle," Matteo yelled, pulling me behind a large, dented dumpster. "He's directly over us." Another thump. This one sparked off the pavement, inches from Luca's boot. I did not think. I dug into my pocket. Carmen, paranoid and brilliant, had given me a tool, a small, black box, the size of a garage door opener, a broad-spectrum frequency jammer. She had called it. "A panic button. If you hear the signal, you press this." "Cover me," I told Matteo. "Eliza, no, get back here." I scrambled out from behind the dumpster, my hands shaking. I did not aim at the roof. I aimed at the alley. "They are coordinating with the beacon," I yelled. "I can blind him." I slammed the button. The effect was instant. It was not a sound I heard. It was a sound I felt, a high-frequency squeal that lanced directly into my skull. It was agonizing, a wave of pure electronic noise designed to overwhelm everything. Another thump came from the roof, but this time, it was wild. The shot went wide, hitting the dumpster I had just left, rocking it on its wheels. "It worked!" I shouted, the pain in my head making me dizzy. "He missed! He cannot get the lock!" But the squeal had done something else. It had been an alarm. From both ends of the narrow alley, sirens erupted. Not one car. It sounded like a dozen. Red and blue lights flashed, turning the alley into a nightmare. Headlights flooded the space, pinning all of us in their glare. "Police!" Luca yelled, flattening himself against the wall. "It is a setup they boxed us in." Uniformed city police officers were spilling out of their cars, guns drawn. "Go back to the car now," Matteo screamed. He grabbed me by the arm, half dragging me. He and Luca fired, not at the police, but at the shadows on the roof, suppressing the sniper, giving us the seconds we needed. We ran, stumbling over garbage bags, and piled into our car just as the first squad cars screeched to a halt at the alley entrance. But the police were not just aiming. I watched in horror as two of them raised their phones, recording us. "They are filming," I whispered, the blood draining from my face. Carmen was right. They wanted us here. They wanted to catch Matteo Vescari, the mafia boss, in a gunfight with the police. They set the whole thing up. As Luca threw the car into reverse, tires squealing, another sound cut through the night. It came from the Alma restaurant. It was not a pulse. It was a 4-second burst of pure digital static, a white noise screech that seemed to wipe the air clean. "What was that?" Luca growled, wrenching the wheel and speeding away into the darkness. My ears were ringing. The phantom pain from the jammer was still there. "He's gone," I said, my voice hollow. "Malenko. He was in a tunnel under the restaurant. That was the erasure signal. He just wiped the local beacon network. He is gone, and he left us to take the blame." The Escalade was silent as we raced through the streets, the sirens fading behind us. Luca was bleeding from a graze on his cheekbone, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. We had lost. We had walked right into their trap. Matteo Vescari was not looking out the window. He was looking at me. His face was a mask of shadows in the dark car, but his voice was low, heavy, and absolutely final. Adriana was wrong. he said. I looked up, confused and shaking. This is not a street fight, Ma, he said. It is not about guns. It is about that. He gestured toward my head. That beacon, that screech, that is the battlefield. He leaned forward, and the intensity in his gaze pinned me to the seat. No one else in my world hears this but you, Eliza. No one. Carmen was right about the law. I was right about Presidium. But you are the only one who can actually fight them. He was not making a bargain. He was not asking. He was handing me the war. From now on, he said, his voice flat, you lead this. You tell us where the sound is, and we will go. The disaster at Alma forced us into the shadows, but it also gave me the key, the white noise screech. The erasure signal was not just a deletion, it was a reboot. For 4 seconds, the entire beacon network in that sector had been vulnerable. It was a system-wide reset. Carmen Soto, with her relentless legal mind, started cross-referencing that signal with Presidium's public filings. She found it buried in a technical appendix for their shareholders. Scheduled network maintenance, she said, her voice tight with suppressed excitement. Every 72 hours, they push a new encryption key. To do it, the entire network has to go dark. A white night, they call it. They reboot the system. How long? Mateo asked. 22 minutes, I said, my voice quiet. I had been listening to the recordings from Alma over and over. The screech was 4 seconds. The system came back online 22 minutes later. That is our window. That is when the mobile server is vulnerable. That is when it has to be stationary to receive the new code. We had a window. Now we needed a location. My ears became our entire intelligence agency. I lived in a world of amplified sound, sifting through hundreds of hours of audio feeds from Vescari's surveillance network. I was not just listening for the 3-2 pulse anymore. I was listening for the source. I was listening for the low, steady thrum of that industrial refrigeration unit. For 2 days, I found nothing. The truck was a ghost, moving constantly. Then, at 3:07 in the morning, I heard it. It was faint, almost completely masked by the rumble of the New Jersey Turnpike. But it was there, the hum, and it was not moving. I have it, I whispered. We were in the Vescari Logistics War Room, the windows black. It is stationary, a warehouse district, just south of the port. Mateo was at my side in an instant. He looked at the map I was flagging. I know that block. It is a dead zone. Old shipping depots. The White Knight reboot is in 4 hours, Carmen said, magged, looking at the clock. That is the target. We go in hard. Adriano Vescari said he was there, against Mateo's wishes. A full team. No, I said. My voice was sharp, and it cut him off. He looked at me. Stunned. You go in hard, and they trigger the erasure signal. We get nothing. The truck will be empty by the time you cut the door. This has to be low profile. It has to be quiet. Quiet, Adriano scoffed. We are hitting a Bratva server. She is right, Mateo said, silencing his cousin with a look. This is not a raid. It is a data theft. Just us, Luca, me, and Eliza. Me. My head snapped up. You are leading. Remember, he said, you are the only one who can hear the traps. Luca and I are just your bodyguards. 3 hours later, I was not Eliza Hart. I was a shadow. I wore all black, my hair tied back. The only piece of technology I had, apart from a hard drive Carmen had given me, was a new set of headphones. They were not headphones. They were a bone conduction rig. They did not cover my ears. They sat on the bones of my temples, just in front of my ears. This will let you hear the subsonics, Carmen had explained, her face grim. The sounds below human hearing, the pressure plates, the traps, they will sing to you through the bone. The warehouse was a massive brick box, dark and silent. The rain had started again, a cold drizzle that slicked the pavement. Luca moved first, bolt cutters making a single, muffled snap on the chain-link fence. We slipped through, into the yard. The server truck was there, parked in the center of the yard, 50 feet from the warehouse itself. It was a plain white refrigerated truck, its freezer unit giving off the low, steady hum I knew better than my own heartbeat. "The network goes dark in 3 minutes," I whispered. My ears were open, listening to the night. The bone conduction rig was sending a low, almost imperf logs. "Eliza," Mateo said, his voice a low breath in my ear. "Find the traps." I closed my eyes. I listened. The yard was not silent. The bone conduction rig was feeding me the secret sounds. The main warehouse door was humming. It was a pressure sensor. "Not the warehouse," I whispered. "The truck is the target. They are drawing us inside the building. The truck is where we need to be." We moved across the open space, low and fast. We reached the side of the truck. The hum of the freezer was loud now, vibrating in my teeth. 2 minutes, I said. Luca was at the back of the truck, examining the heavy padlock on the doors. "Wait," I said, putting my hand on his arm. I pressed the bone conduction rig tighter against my temple. "The doors are loud. The lock, it is singing the wrong song." "What?" Luca whispered, confused. "It is a vibration sensor. It is not the 3-2 pulse. It is something else, a new signal. It is a trap." I moved along the side of the truck, running my hand along the cold metal, my head tilted. "Here, these side panels. There are 2 of them. They are access ports. This one is clean." I pointed to a small, square panel near the front of the truck. "But this one is singing. It is the same as the lock. They expect us to go in the back, or through the main side port. This one." I tapped the clean panel. "Is the one they forgot." 1 minute, and Mateo said. Luca did not hesitate. He had a small, specialized tool. He jammed it into the edge of the small panel. There was no lock, just 4 small bolts. He worked fast, the metal making only the barest click as he reversed the bolts. At exactly 4:13 in the morning, the freezer unit's hum died. The entire beacon network, all across the city, went dark. The white night had begun. "Now, Luca," Mateo commanded. Luca pulled the panel free. It opened onto a dark space, filled with the hum of high-end servers. "I am going in," I said. Like hell when Mateo said, "I am going." "You do not know what you're looking for," I shot back, my voice fierce. "I do. I know the sound of the master drive. Give me 90 seconds. Before he could argue, I had swung myself up and through the small opening. Inside, it was a technician's nightmare. Wires everywhere, servers blinking with red and green lights. It was hot, and the air smelled of ozone. I plugged Carmen's hard drive into the main rack, and a small progress bar lit up, copying. "Get out of there, Eliza," Mateo's voice came from outside. "Almost. It is copying the dictionary." "We have company." The voice was not Mateo's. I froze. I turned around. Standing at the other side of the server rack, having come in through the main trap door, was Ethan Park, the developer from the symposium. He looked terrified, pale, and he was holding a gun with shaking hands. "You?" I breathed. "I knew you would hear me," he said, his voice trembling. "I knew you would hear the song. I disabled the alarm on this door for just 2 minutes. I knew you would come." "Get out of the way, Ethan," I said, my eyes on the progress bar. 70%. "You do not understand," he said, the gun wavering. "You cannot just take the dictionary. You have to take me. I am the only one who can read it. It is not just tones. It is a kill switch." "What are you talking about?" "Presidium," he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "They are not just in the ports. They are in everything. The city contract. They put their beacon tech. They put it in assistive devices, hearing aids, pacemakers, public transport access, and they built a kill switch, a master code that can stop them, all of them. They can shut off a man's heart from a truck. That is what Malenko is using. That is what they are selling. I did not know." "Eliza, get out!" It was Luca, yelling this time. The progress bar hit 100%. I ripped the drive out. Come with me, I said to Ethan. Tell the feds. No, he shouted, desperation in his eyes. You do not get it. I cannot go to the feds. I wrote half the code I am. I want a deal. Immunity. I give you the kill switch code. You get me immunity from prosecution. He was not a hero, and he was a coward, trying to save his own skin. A bullet tore through the metal wall of the truck, right where my head had been. Thump. The Bratva were here. Go! I screamed at Ethan, shoving him toward the open panel. Go now! He scrambled out. I followed, tumbling to the wet pavement. Gunfire erupted from the warehouse. Adriano. He had brought his men after all. He had disobeyed Matteo. This way, Matteo yelled. Grabbing my arm, he and Luca were providing cover fire, pushing the Bratva back. We ran back toward the fence. We were almost there. Luca. I watched it happen. It was slow motion. A muzzle flash from a warehouse window. Luca stumbled, a grunt of pure pain forced from his chest. He did not fall. He kept moving, but he was slower. I am hit, he growled, shoving me toward the fence. Go, boss. Get her out. We were through the fence. Matteo grabbed Luca, throwing the big man's arm over his shoulder, half carrying him. I looked back. Luca was bleeding. A dark, wet patch was spreading rapidly high on his left arm, near the shoulder. We piled into the Escalade. Adriano and his men were in their own cars, laying down a field of fire as they retreated. Tires squealed. We were gone. Inside the car, it was dark, except for the flashing streetlights. How bad? Matteo asked Luca. It is just a graze. Boss, I am fine. Luca gasped, but his face was white with pain. Let me see, I said. I ripped open his sleeve. It was not a graze. It was a through and through. The bullet had gone clean through the thick muscle of his shoulder. It was bleeding, heavily. Get me the first aid kit, I snapped at Matteo. In the back, now, and you. I said to Luca, press down, hard, right here. I took the kit, my hands shaking, but my mind clear. I had taken a Red Cross first aid course so I could help Noah if he ever got hurt. I pulled out a compression bandage. This is gonna hurt. Luca, I said, my voice steady. I have to stop the bleeding. I packed the wound, applying pressure, my fingers slick with his blood. I wrapped the bandage tight, my knuckles straining. I kept pressure on it, my whole body thrown against his arm, trying to keep the life inside him. Hold on, Luca, I whispered. Just hold on. We got back to the safe house. Not the office. The apartment. My mother and Noah were asleep. We laid Luca on the white leather sofa. It was instantly stained. I kept pressure on the wound. Carmen, Matteo said into his phone, get your doctor, the one who does not file reports. Get him to the apartment, now, and get here. An hour later, Luca was stitched up and pale, but stable. The silent doctor had come and gone. Carmen Soto was sitting at the glass table, her face ashen, and in the center of the table sat the hard drive, the dictionary of tones. It is all there, I said, my voice hoarse. I had told them about Ethan, about the kill switch. He wants a deal. He will get one, Carmen said, but he is not the priority. This is... She tapped the drive. What do we do with it? Adriano asked. He was there, defiant. We use it. We find this kill switch. We use it against Malenko. We take the port back. Matteo Vescari had been silent, staring out the window at the city. He turned around. His face was unreadable. He looked at Adriano, then at Carmen, then at me. He picked up the hard drive. He held it in his hand. This was his leverage. This was the key to his survival, the key to destroying his enemies, the key to securing his own immunity. This was the dark leverage he needed. He walked over to Carmen Soto, and he handed it to her. No copies, he said, his voice flat. Adriano looked like he had been slapped. Matteo, what are you doing? That is our only, It is poison, Matteo said. We use that. We become them. We become Presidium. He looked at Carmen. Get this to your contact at the United States Attorney's Office, the one you trust, the clean one. Give it all to them. The dictionary, the kill switch intel. Ethan Park. Give them everything. Mateo, Carmen said, her voice unsteady for the first time. If you do this, you have no leverage. If Malenko talks, if Presidium makes a deal, the feds will come for you. They will not distinguish. You will be the prize. Let them come, Mateo said. He turned and walked over to me. I was still shaking, my hands stained with Luca's blood. He stood in front of me, this mafia boss, this man of shadows. He looked completely vulnerable. He's right when, I whispered, they will crucify you. Maybe, he said. His dark eyes held mine. But if they do, if this blows back, and they put me in a cage, you have to do something for me, Eliza. What? You write the truth, he said. You do not let them call me a monster. You do not let them bury what Presidium did. You tell them about the sounds. You tell them what you heard. You write the whole, entire truth. He was not asking me to lie for him. He was asking me to be his witness. He was putting his legacy, his truth, in my hands. I looked at this complex, dangerous, and impossibly moral man. I nodded. We waited. The silence that followed Mateo's decision was louder than any gunshot. We were back in the apartment, a fortress of white leather and glass, floating above a city that was holding its breath. My mother and Noah were in their rooms, an island of fragile normalcy in this ocean of chaos. I spent my time checking on Luca, changing his bandages. He was a terrible patient, gruff and silent, but his eyes, when he thought I was not looking, were filled with a grudging respect. Adriano Vescari was the real problem. He paced the living room like a caged panther, his fury a tangible thing in the air. You gave it away, he snarled at Mateo, for the 10th time in as many hours. Our only sword, you handed it to a federal prosecutor. They are not your friend's cousin. They will use that drive to gut Presidium, and then they will use the handle to gut us. Mateo Vescari did not look up from the tablet in his hand. He was tracking shipping manifests, running his legitimate business as if the world were not ending. We did it the clean way. Adriano, now we wait to see if the clean way works. The clean way is for lambs, Adriano spat. We are lions. The lions are extinct, Mateo said, his voice flat. The cockroaches survive. We are going to be cockroaches. The wait lasted for 48 agonizing hours. I tried to listen to the city, but my ears were filled with static. I was waiting for the 3-2 pulse. I was waiting for the sound of Malenko's revenge. Instead, the sound came from the television. We were eating dinner, a silent, tense meal, when the local news broadcast was interrupted. We have breaking news from the Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminal. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Mateo's head snapped up. The screen showed a chaotic scene. Federal Bureau of Investigation vans, Homeland Security vehicles, state police cruisers. They were flooding the port, lights flashing in the pre-dawn darkness. Federal agents, the reporter said, breathless, are executing a series of coordinated raids on multiple locations connected to a private security contractor, Presidium Security. The camera zoomed in on the first target, a cold storage warehouse. The one I had tracked, I watched as agents used a battering ram to smash through a side door. They are hitting 3 separate warehouses, the reporter continued, and a known staging ground in Jersey City. They used it, I whispered, my voice trembling. Carmen, she gave it to them. They used the dictionary. Mateo stood up, walking closer to the screen. His face was unreadable. Then the image changed, and my stomach dropped. The camera focused on the main warehouse, the one where Luca had been shot. The agents were not just bringing out computers. They were bringing out people. Dozens of them, men and women looking pale, terrified, and malnourished, blinking against the flashing lights as they were wrapped in blankets and led to ambulances. My God, my mother whispered, her hands flying to her mouth. This is not just a corporate raid, the reporter's voice cracked with emotion. Sources on the scene describe this as a major rescue operation. We are told these individuals are suspected victims of a vast, sophisticated human trafficking ring. Preliminary reports are suggesting over 70 people. have been rescued from conditions described as forced labor. 70 people. I felt the room tilt, the sounds I had heard, the 3-2 pulse, the hum of the freezer truck. It was not just about smuggling or extortion. It was about this. It was about human lives, packaged and stored like frozen goods. I looked at Mateo. He was rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His eyes were locked on the faces of the victims, his jaw working silently. This was the reality of the war he was fighting. A war he had just won, not with a gun, but with a hard drive. The news cycle exploded within hours. Presidium was not just a security firm, it was the center of the biggest human rights scandal in the state's history. The next image to hit the airwaves was the one we were all waiting for. The chief executive officer, the slick man from the symposium. He was not wearing his expensive suit, and he was in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief, being led from his glass tower office by federal agents. The United States Attorney's Office, the anchor read, has filed a 30-count indictment charging Presidium's executive board with racketeering, conspiracy to commit forced labor, and violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Ethan Park, the developer, was named as a key cooperating witness. He had gotten his deal. He had saved himself by exposing the kill switch. Carmen Soto returned to the apartment that night. She looked like she had not slept in a week, but her eyes were bright, fierce. "It is done," she said, collapsing onto the white sofa. "Presidium is finished. The board is negotiating a deferred prosecution agreement." "What does that mean?" I asked, handing her a bottle of water. "It means they avoid total corporate dissolution, but at a high cost," she said, taking a long drink. 1. They are funding a massive victims restitution fund, millions of dollars. 2. And this is the part that matters. They are transferring the entire beacon technology and all its patents to a third party. They are giving up the dictionary of tones and the kill switch. The government wants the technology neutralized. They do not want it in private hands or even in their own. It is too dangerous. "So we won," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. "We won the battle," Carmen said, her face darkening. "What about Malenko?" Luca asked from his corner, his voice rough. Carmen's expression turned to stone. "Gone." Adriano Vescari, who had been watching from the kitchen, slammed his glass down on the counter. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "He slipped the net," Carmen said, her voice flat. "The feds hit the warehouses exactly where the dictionary pointed, but Malenko was not at any of them. The Bratva network is deep. He is a ghost. They froze every known account, seized every known asset, but the man himself, he vanished." "This!" Adriano roared, finally exploding. He stormed across the room, getting right in Mateo's face. "This is what I warned you about. This is the price of clean. The government cut the branches, but they let the root get away." Mateo did not flinch. "He's one man, Adriano." "He is the man," his cousin yelled, "and he is angry. He knows we did this. He knows about the diner. He knows we took his network. He will not just disappear. He will come back. He will come for us. He will come for her." He pointed a thick finger at me. The air left my lungs. He was right. "He wants a hard strike," Adriano pressed, his voice dropping to a desperate growl. "He wants to make us bleed. We hit him first. I still have men on the street. We can find his safe houses. We can do what the federal agents cannot. We end this the Vescari way, for the family." There was a long, terrible silence. Mateo looked at his cousin. This man of violence and blood loyalty. I could see the temptation. I could see the logic of the old way. One strike, end the threat. No. The word was quiet, but it was absolute. "Mateo, be reasonable." "No." Mateo's voice was harder now, cutting through Adriano's rage. "We just gave the government the biggest clean trafficking bust in this city's history. We just saved 70 people using the law. And you want to celebrate by starting a street war?" "It is survival, cousin." "It is suicide," Mateo countered, his voice rising, crackling with an intensity I had never heard from him. "The second we use violence, the second I act like the Mafia boss they all whisper I am, the feds will forget everything we just did. They will forget Presidium. They will forget the victims. And they will come for me. And they will be right." He stepped closer to Adriano, and his cousin, for all his bulk, actually took a step back. "Malenko is a ghost," Matteo said. "Fine. You hunt ghosts with information, not bullets. We stay clean. We prioritize the legal path. We do not become the thing we are trying to destroy. There will be no violence. That is final." Adriano stared at Matteo, his chest heaving, his face a mask of betrayal. He saw the iron in his cousin's eyes. He knew he had lost. With a curse that was half a sob, Adriano Viscari turned, stormed out of the apartment, and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the glass in the windows. The adrenaline of the raids and the confrontation faded, leaving a hollow, nervous quiet. The news was a storm, 24 hours a day. They called the victims the Silenced 70. They talked about the ghost network Presidium had built, but the story was all about corporate greed and Russian mobsters. It was wrong. It felt incomplete. It was missing the how. It was missing the why. I sat at my laptop, the glow of the screen lighting my face in the dark room. I thought of my promise to Matteo. Write the whole, entire truth. I was not a journalist. I was a waitress. I was an American Sign Language interpreter, but I was the only one who had heard it. I opened a blank document. I started to type. I did not use names. I did not mention Matteo, or Luca, or Carmen, or even myself. I wrote about the sounds. I wrote about a city that hums with secrets. I wrote about the buzz of a broken light in a 24-hour diner, the one that sings in B-flat. I wrote about the compressor in a soda machine. I wrote about the 3-2 pulse of an ambush, hidden inside the click of a vending machine. I wrote about the invisible people. The ones who work the docks at 3 in the morning, the ones who clean the glass towers, the ones who serve the coffee. Their faces blurred by exhaustion. The people who, like me, hear the city's real voice, but are never, ever listened to. I wrote about how easy it is to use technology to silence the vulnerable, to turn a network meant to protect into a cage. I titled the post, "The City's Vending Machine is Singing." I created an anonymous email account. I created an anonymous blog page. I hit publish. Then I sent the link to a single independent journalist, a woman Carmen had once mentioned as being hungry and clean. I closed the laptop, my heart hammering. I expected nothing. 24 hours later, my article was not an article. It was a fire. It had been shared 10,000 times, then 50,000. By morning, it had passed 100,000. The major news outlets were quoting it. An anonymous source, identifying only as an urban listener, has detailed the acoustic network used by Presidium. My words were everywhere. My phrases, the ghost in the machine, the sound of silence, the invisible people, were being used by news anchors on every channel. My piece had given a human voice to the technological horror. It honored the victims by explaining the delicate, secret world they moved through. I was still in the safe house. I was still Eliza Hart, the girl who served coffee, but my words, written in secret, suddenly had more power than all of Adriano's guns. That night, Matteo Viscari found me standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city lights. He was holding his phone, the screen illuminating my article. He did not congratulate me. He did not say he was proud. He just stood beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his shoulder. He watched the city with me, the city my words were now describing. "You wrote the truth," he said, his voice low. "Yes," I said, my throat tight. He was silent for a long moment. "It is beautiful," he said, as if the word itself surprised him. We stood there, two shadows against the glass. The raids were a victory. Presidium was broken. But Malenko was a ghost in the wind, and Adriano was a storm waiting to break. The war was not over. It had just changed, and my anonymous article had just painted a brand new target on my back. The anonymous article did more than just fill in the blanks. It created a gravitational pull. The narrative of the Silent 70 was no longer just about the Bratva's cruelty or Presidium's greed. It was about a systemic failure, a city that had deliberately stopped listening. My words, the words of the urban listener, became a rallying cry. Immigrant aid groups, the longshoremen's unions, and a dozen different community legal clinics formed a coalition. They did not just want justice, they wanted control. They got it. Carmen Soto delivered the final terms of the deferred prosecution agreement. We were in her high-rise office, a place of polished wood and glass, a stark contrast to the sterile white apartment. Luca, his arm in a fresh black sling, stood by the door. Mateo was at the window, watching the port. Presidium did not just roll over, Carmen said, her voice crisp. They fought, but the listener article, she nodded at me, backed them into a corner. Public opinion was so toxic that the federal judge was threatening to revoke the DPA and force a criminal trial. She slid a thick document across the table. So they capitulated. This is the final agreement. Presidium, to survive, must cede 35% of its total corporate stock into a newly formed entity, the Harbor Reconstruction and Victims Fund. A fund, I said, testing the word, so the money goes to the victims. Yes, Carmen said, but it is much more than that. This is not just a payout. That 35% stake is a controlling interest. The fund will be managed by a board, and that board's primary mandate is not profit. It is safety. It is ethics. It is ensuring this never happens again. She leaned forward. This is where you come in, Eliza. The coalition, they have been meeting for 3 days. They know the government cannot run this. They know a corporation will not. They trust one person. Me? The idea was absurd. They do not even know who I am. They know your voice, she said. They trust the listener. I have been acting as intermediary. The coalition is formally nominating you, Eliza Hart, to sit on that board as an independent commissioner. More than that, they are asking you to serve as the first chairperson of the new Technology Ethics Committee. I felt the blood drain from my face. A commissioner, a chairperson. I looked at my hands, half expecting to see diner grease under my nails. Carmen, I am a waitress. I am an interpreter. I do not know how to run a company. You know how to listen, Mateo said, turning from the window. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. That is more than any chief executive officer they have ever had. You know how to hear the lie. You know the sound of the 3-2 pulse. You are the only person who should have this job. They will eat me alive, I whispered. No, they will not, Carmen said, a rare, fierce smile touching her lips, because the 35% is just the start. 2 days later, the financial world of the city tilted. Vescari Logistics, Mateo's massive, spotless, legitimate shipping empire, issued a public press release. It announced a major capital investment. Vescari Logistics was purchasing 12% of Presidium's remaining public stock. It was a clean investment. Every dollar was sourced from public contracts, audited and transparent. It was not a shadow purchase. It was a public declaration. Adriano Vescari, I heard, had lost his mind. He had stormed into Mateo's office, screaming about exposure, about painting a target on the family. Mateo had him calmly removed by security. The purchase made Mateo the single largest private shareholder. And that night, he came to the apartment. My mother and Noah were there, finally breathing easier, though Noah still hated the unfamiliar windows. I met Mateo in the hallway. This is not a safe house anymore. Eliza, he said, it is your home. If you want it, my men, Luca, will always be your security, but you are not a witness. You are not in hiding. He held out a set of keys. I've also arranged this. It was another document, not from Carmen. This one was simpler. Vescari Logistics, I read, hereby assigns its full proxy voting rights for its 12% share in Presidium to Miss Eliza Hart. I looked up at him. my heart hammering a rhythm I could not parse. Mateo, this is everything. 35% from the fund, 12% from you. That is 47%. That is control. It is a voting block, he corrected gently. It is the power to say no. It is the power to make them listen to you. I cannot sit on that board. My name brings the wrong kind of attention. But you can. You are the listener. You are the chairperson. And now, you are the vote. I stared at the paper. This man, this mafia boss I had saved in a diner, was handing me a piece of his empire. No strings attached. Why? I whispered. Why trust me with this? You write the truth, he said simply, echoing his words from that night. You see the truth, and you saved Luca's life. You did not flinch. He paused. I trust you to do the right thing. I do not always trust myself. This keeps me clean, too. The first board meeting was a week later. The company had a new name, one I had suggested, and the coalition had approved Harbor Safe. I walked into a room of hostile, pale, older men. They were the holdovers, the investors who had not been indicted but had lost a fortune. They looked at me, this small, 26-year-old woman in a plain black suit, like I was a clerical error. Miss Hart, the interim chief executive officer said, his voice dripping with condescension. We are pleased you could join us as the community liaison. Chairperson Carmen Soto said, taking the seat beside me, Miss, Hart is the chairperson of the Technology Ethics Committee, and she placed the proxy document on the table with a firm thud. She controls 47% of the votes, so I suggest you call her Madam Chair. The blood drained from the chief executive officer's face. The whispers stopped. I was terrified. My hands were shaking under the table. But I thought of the 70 faces on the news. I thought of Noah. I thought of the 3-2 pulse. Thank you, gentlemen, I said, my voice clear, amplified by the room's high-tech microphones. Our first order of business is the dismissal of the entire old guard management, effective immediately. Our second order of business is the ratification of the new Beacon and Artificial Intelligence Ethics Charter. You will find a copy in front of you. You will sign it today. I had not just stepped into power, I had seized it. That night, the adrenaline finally faded, leaving me exhausted and overwhelmed. I was not the diner waitress anymore. I was Madam Chair. I was a person who fired executives and rewrote corporate policy, and I had no idea who I was supposed to be when I went home. Mateo was waiting for me, not in the apartment, but on the public walkway by the Hudson, just down the street. It was cold, the wind sharp off the water. The city was a wall of light behind him. He was not wearing his tailored wool coat. He was in a simple black jacket. He just watched me approach. Madam Chair, he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Do not, I said, my voice tired. I do not even know what I am doing, Mateo. You did exactly what you said you would do, he said. You made them listen. We stood in silence for a moment, the sound of the highway a distant roar. This changes things. Eliza, he said, turning to face me. Us. I am not the man who pulled you from the diner, and you are not the girl who poured coffee. You are a corporate commissioner. You hold my proxy. We are involved. My heart clenched. I thought this was the moment he would claim me, the price for the proxy. So I wanted to propose an agreement. He said he did not reach for me. He just held his hands loosely at his sides. An agreement. A partnership agreement, he said, his voice serious. I want to be in your life, publicly. I want to be the man standing beside you. But you are not my property. Eliza, you are not a mafia wife. You are my partner. So I am proposing terms. I waited. My breath caught in my throat. 1, he said. Full financial autonomy. Your money is yours. My money is mine. What we build together, we share. But you will never be dependent on me. 2, he continued. Full transparency. You have a right to know where I am, who I am meeting with. You will never have to guess if I am in danger. And I will have the same respect for you. No more secrets, no more shadows. He looked at me, his dark eyes vulnerable in the city light. Those are my terms, a partnership, in business, in this, whatever this is. I looked at this incredible, impossible man. He was offering me everything but asking for nothing except honesty. He was not trying to put me in a cage. He was offering to help me build my own. I accept, I said. My voice was firm. And I have one condition of my own. His eyebrows raised, intrigued. No veto power, I said. He smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up his entire face. No veto power. You do not get to tell me not to run into danger, I said. You do not get to override my decisions, at the company or in my life, and I will never, ever, try to veto yours. We advise, we protect, we do not command. We are partners, not owners. Matteo Viscari looked at me for a long time. He reached out. His hand slowly and gently touched my cheek, his thumb brushing away a piece of hair the wind had whipped across my face. His touch was warm, and it sent a jolt straight through me. No veto power, he agreed, his voice a low, rough whisper. He leaned in, and I met him halfway. His lips were firm and warm and tasted of the cold night air. It was not a kiss of possession. It was not a kiss of fire. It was a kiss of ink on a contract. It was a seal. It was a promise. We were partners, and we had a city to save. My honeymoon as Madam Chair of Harbor Safe lasted exactly 7 days. The ink on our partnership agreement was barely dry when the first fire started. It did not begin with a gunshot or a secret beacon. It began with an email from a port operations manager. Subject: potential false negative, Pier C smoke sensors. The email was dry, technical. It noted that 2 scheduled fire drills at Pier C had failed to trigger the automated system. The sensors, it turned in, were legacy Presidium hardware. My stomach clenched. I called an emergency technical review. I did not invite the board. I brought in the engineers. I sat in a conference room for 6 hours, listening. The problem was not just 2 sensors. It was the code. It was a subtle flaw, buried deep in the operating system, a flaw that could cause the sensors to enter an infinite diagnostic loop, effectively blinding them. How many? I asked the lead engineer, a man named David, who looked like he had not slept. The batch is about 2,000 units. Madam Chair, they are installed across Piers C, D, and F. And the fix. He looked down. We cannot patch it remotely. The flaw is in the firmware. We would have to physically replace every single one. 2,000 units. The cost would be astronomical. It would wipe out our entire quarterly profit margin, and then some. I thought about the holdover investors, the ones who were already sharpening their knives, waiting for me to fail. That afternoon, I called my first full emergency board meeting. The old guard was there, led by a silver-haired investor named Harrison. He represented a block of shareholders who had survived the purge. "Madam Chair," he said, his voice smooth and condescending when I had laid out the facts. "This is, of course, a minor technical setback. A simple software patch will be issued, and we can No, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. It cannot be patched. The entire system is compromised. Then we will issue a service bulletin. Another investor said, impatient. We will flag it for the next service cycle. No, I said again, louder this time. We're not flagging it. We are replacing it. All of it. The room exploded. Recall? Harrison looked at me as if I'd grown a second head. A full recall of 2,000 sensors. Do you have any idea what that will cost? We are barely solvent as it is. The market will crucify us. I am aware of the cost, Mr. Harrison Moe, I said, my hands steady on the table. I am also aware of the cost of a fire on Pier C. I am aware of the lives that would be lost. The name of this company is Harbor Safe. It is not Harbor Profitable. It is not Harbor Maybe. It is Harbor Safe. We will not sell faulty safety equipment. We will recall every unit, effective immediately. We will absorb the loss. You cannot be serious, another board member shouted. You will destroy us. I am serious, I said. I looked at Carmen Soto, who I had insisted be present, and my vote, controlling 47% of this company, is final. The recall is approved. There was a stunned, furious silence. I had just, in one move, declared war on their entire philosophy. Harrison stood up, his face purple. This is an outrage. You are a child, playing with... I am the chair, I interrupted, my voice like ice. And this is my decision. The meeting is adjourned. The fallout was immediate. Our stock price dropped 15% overnight. The financial news declared me incompetent, a naive activist who did not understand business. But then something else happened. The next day, the president of the Longshoremen's Union, a tough older man named Sal, requested a meeting. He walked into my office and looked around, then looked at me. "That move you just pulled," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble, "that cost you millions." "Yes, it did," I said. My men work on those piers," he said. "My brother works on Pier C for 10 years. Presidium sold us shiny boxes and told us we were safe, and we knew they were lying. You just proved you are not them." He put a worn, calloused hand on my desk. "The union stands with Harbor Safe. You lost the investors' trust. You just won ours." The recall was my trial by fire, and I had chosen to walk through it. The fight with the board, however, had just begun. At the next scheduled meeting, Harrison and his allies came prepared. They had charts. They had projections. "We need growth, Miss Hartnett," Harrison said, the false politeness back. "Not more symbolic gestures. The recall was costly. Now you must deliver. We need to secure new contracts. We need to push our beacon technology into new markets, aggressively." "No," I said. "No," he scoffed. "Harbor Safe will not be defined by fast growth. I said it will be defined by safety. Before we seek a single new contract, we are solidifying our foundation. The old way of doing business is over." I slid a stack of documents across the table. "These," I announced, "are memorandums of understanding. They are not contracts. They are promises. The first is with the Longshoremen's Union, committing us to quarterly safety reviews with their members. The second is with the Tri-State Area Refugee and Immigrant Coalition, guaranteeing our technology will never be used for immigration enforcement. The third is with a consortium of trafficking victim aid organizations, giving them oversight and advisory status on our data policies." Harrison looked at the documents as if they were poison. "You are tying our hands. You are giving away our leverage. These groups do not pay us." "They are not supposed to pay us," I said. "They are supposed to trust us. The union, the relief organizations, the community. They are our new market. We are choosing safety before revenue. We are building a company that people believe in, not one they have to fear." My 47% was a hammer. I passed every single memorandum of understanding. The old guard was trapped. They could sell their shares and run, or they could stay and watch me dismantle the very machine they had built. But I could not just be reactive. I had to build. My first proactive project was the one that mattered most to me. It was the reason I was here. We had to listen. We launched it 3 weeks later. We called it Harbor Watch. It was not a network of secret beacons. It was a simple, secure, anonymous reporting platform. It was a hotline. It was a text service. And thanks to my background as an interpreter, it was available in 12 languages, including Spanish, Mandarin, Russian, and at my insistence, American Sign Language via a video relay. The first week, the calls trickled in, a report of a broken ladder, a complaint about a supervisor. Then, on a Tuesday night, a call came in. It was in Spanish, a woman, whispering. She was a cleaner in a warehouse district I did not recognize. She reported a sound, a rhythmic banging, from inside a sealed shipping container. She said it had been there for a day. Because of our new agreements, the call was not routed to a private security force. It was routed to a trusted, vetted contact at Homeland Security, one Carmen had approved, and simultaneously to the Victims' Aid Organization. They found the container. They cut it open, and inside, they found 4 people. They were alive. That week, the call volume to Harbor Watch quadrupled. We had saved 4 people, not with guns, not with spies, but by listening, by simply providing a safe way for one invisible person to talk to another. I was building a new kind of power, but I could not do it alone. I needed a team. My first recruit was the only person I trusted to navigate the legal minefield I was creating. I met Carmen Soto for dinner, back at the Hudson Diner. It was the first time I had been back. It was rebuilt, the window replaced, but it still smelled like old coffee. "A diner?" she asked, raising an eyebrow as she slid into the booth. "This is where it started," I said. "It feels right." I pushed a folder across the table. It was not a legal document. It was an offer letter. "I want you to leave your firm. I want you to come work for Harbor Safe." She laughed, a short, sharp, disbelieving laugh. "Eliza, I am a partner at one of the top firms in New York. You want me to come work for a company that just voluntarily lost millions of dollars. I want you to be our chief compliance officer," I said. "I do not want a lawyer who tells me what is legal. I have plenty of those. I want a lawyer who tells me what is right. I want you to be the conscience of the company. Carmen, I want you to write the rules. I want you to build the Harbor Watch protocols with me." She stopped smiling. She looked at the offer. "Chief Compliance Officer, you are making this up as you go, are you not?" "Yes," I said honestly, "but we are winning, and I cannot do it without you." She closed the folder. "The other partners think I am insane. They think you are insane. They say Matteo Viscari is just using you as a public face. Is that what you think?" She met my gaze. "I think Matteo Viscari is smarter than anyone gives him credit for. He knows he cannot run that company. But you can, and you are terrifying them. Eliza, you are actually changing the rules. They do not know how to fight you." She slid the folder back toward her. "I will need a very large office and an expense account. This will be my pro bono year." My second recruit was more complicated. Ethan Park. The developer who had tried to trade the kill switch for immunity was in a federal holding facility, his case pending. He had cooperated. He had given them the code. He was, technically, a hero. He was also a man who had enabled a human trafficking ring until his own skin was on the line. I went to see him. He was pale, thin, and looked 10 years older. He sat across from me in a gray room, his lawyer beside him. "Miss Hart," his lawyer began. "I want to talk to Ethan," I said, cutting him off. Ethan looked up. His eyes were haunted. "You built a monstrous thing, Ethan," I said quietly. "I did not know," he whispered. Not what they were using it for. Not at first. By the time I did, I was trapped." "You still wrote the code. You still built the cage," I said. "The government is going to give you a pass, but you are not clean." He flinched. "What do you want?" "I am offering you a job," I said. His lawyer's head snapped up. "A job?" "Not a reward," I said, my voice hard. "A remediation. You will come to Harbor Safe. You will be paid a junior developer's salary. You will not be in management. You will work in a glass office in the center of our building, and you will have an independent oversight committee, sourced from the union and our community partners, monitoring every line of code you write." That is a prison," he stammered. "It is a second chance," I said. "You will spend the next 2 years of your life dismantling the very system you built. You will find every kill switch, every backdoor, every single flaw, and you will teach us how to fix them. You will work for the people you hurt. You will earn your redemption in public, or you can walk away. Take your immunity and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Your choice." He stared at me, his mind racing. He was a man who hid. I was offering him a place to work, but nowhere to hide. I will do it," he said, his voice barely audible. I stood up. "Good. Carmen will send the paperwork." I walked out of the facility, breathing in the cold, damp city air. I had my team, a brilliant, ruthless lawyer as my conscience, a fallen genius as my mechanic. We were bleeding money. Our investors hated us. Our enemies were still out there. But the phones at Harbor Watch were ringing, and for the first time, we were all listening. We found a new rhythm. It was a life built in two distinct spaces, the glass and steel of the harbor-safe boardroom and the quiet, warm kitchen of our apartment. The world saw me as Madam Chair, the activist who had accidentally become a corporate power broker. But in the apartment, I was just Eliza. It had been 6 months since the recall, 6 months of grueling work, of rebuilding a company from the studs. We had stabilized. Harbor Watch was a success. Ethan Park, working in his glass prison, had successfully dismantled and rebuilt the Beacon firmware, closing every back door. Carmen Soto was a terror, building a wall of compliance and ethics that made our investors furious, but our community partners loyal. We were, against all odds, becoming stable. I was in the kitchen one evening, making coffee. The apartment was quiet. My mother and Noah had their own place now, a few floors below us, a space Mateo had insisted on providing. Noah was thriving. He was interning at Harbor Safe, helping Ethan catalog the new clean beacon signals. He loved the order of it. Mateo walked into the kitchen, his tie loosened. He had been in audits for 2 straight days. Viscari Logistics was undergoing its own painful transformation. He leaned against the counter, watching me. "The auditors finally left," he said. And I asked, not turning around, "Are you officially clean, Mr. Viscari?" "As clean as I can be." He said, "Adriano is officially relocated to the Miami office. He is unhappy, but the board is stable. We are legitimate." I turned, leaning against the sink, holding my warm mug. "It is a different world, is it not?" "It is a quieter one," he said. He put his phone down on the granite. He looked at me, his dark eyes serious. But the familiar intensity had softened. It was no longer the sharp focus of a general. It was the steady gaze of a partner. "I have been thinking," he said, pushing away from the counter and walking toward me, "about our partnership agreement, the one we made on the waterfront." My heart gave a familiar little jump. "Oh, are you looking for a loophole, planning a veto?" "Never," he said. He stopped just in front of me, close enough that I could feel the warmth from his body. "I am proposing an amendment." He did not get down on one knee. He did not pull out a ring. This was Mateo. He was a man of contracts, of terms. He simply reached out and took my free hand, his thumb tracing a pattern on my knuckles. "I want to make it permanent. Eliza," he said, his voice low, "I want to marry you, not as an acquisition, not as a merger, as a continuation of our agreement." He paused, a small, rare smile touching his lips. "The terms are the same. Full financial autonomy, full transparency, no veto power." He squeezed my hand. "But with one addition, a permanent, standing meeting in this kitchen every morning for the rest of our lives." I looked into his eyes. This was the man who had pulled me from a hail of gunfire, who had handed me his proxy, who had trusted me with his legacy. He was not offering me a fairy tale. He was offering me reality, a shared life, built on the rules we had made together. "I accept the amendment," I whispered. He kissed me then, a deep, slow kiss that was not about passion or possession, but about promise. It was the seal on our final contract. It was the sound of the world finally, truly becoming quiet. Our wedding was 3 weeks later. It was not a society event. It was not in a grand church. We held it in the small, walled garden behind our apartment building. There were perhaps 20 people there. My mother, her face relaxed and happy for the first time in years. Luca, his arm fully healed, standing stiffly in a suit, his eyes scanning the perimeter out of pure habit. Carmen Soto, who had presented me with what she called a mutually binding, non-hostile merger agreement, which was her term for a prenuptial, and which Mateo had signed without reading. And Noah, my brother, my 17-year-old anchor, wore a small tuxedo. He hated the bow tie, but he wore it for me. He stood up to give a toast, his hands shaking as he held a small index card. "When I was little," Noah began, his voice clear in the quiet garden, The city was too loud. All the sounds were bad. The trucks, the horns, the broken speaker at the library that buzzed all wrong. It all hurt. He looked up from his card, first at me. My sister, Eliza, taught me how to listen to the right sounds. She taught me how to find the patterns in the noise. She made it less scary. Then he turned his gaze to Mateo. You were a very loud sound. Mateo, when you came, the whole city got loud for a while. Gunshots, sirens. My sister was scared, and I was scared. He took a breath. But you listened to her, and she listened to you, and together, you made the city quiet again. He smiled then. A wide, beautiful smile. You made it quiet in the right way. You turned off all the bad sounds. Now, he looked back at me, his eyes shining. I can just hear the good ones. Thank you for making the city quiet, Eliza. I was crying, silent tears running down my cheeks. Mateo, the man I had never seen show emotion in public, wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me tightly against his side. He was not just my partner. He was my family. My life was no longer my own. It belonged to this new, strange, powerful entity we had built. My position at Harbor Safe was not temporary. Carmen, in her infinite wisdom, had seen to that. You are not just the chair, Eliza, she had explained in a budget meeting, her voice flat. You are the central asset, the goodwill, the listener. The corporation does not get to keep you for free. She had renegotiated my compensation. It was not a massive salary. It was stock. The board, forced by the terms of the DPA and the pressure from the union, had granted me 15% of the company's shares, vested over 4 years. It was meant to be a golden handcuff to ensure I stayed. It had an effect they had not anticipated. I now held 15% of the stock directly. Mateo still held his 12%, and his proxy vote remained firmly and irrevocably in my hand. And I still chaired the Victims Fund, which controlled the 35% community stake in us. I controlled 62% of the votes. The old guard investors, like Harrison, were trapped. They could not oust me. They could not challenge my safety before revenue policies. They could either sell their shares at a loss or stay quiet and let the activist waitress run the company. They stayed quiet. I was no longer a symbol. I was the one. Real dominant power. I had the absolute ethical control I needed to keep the company clean forever. And as I changed my world, Mateo was changing his transformation was quieter, but just as seismic. He was rebuilding the Vescari Empire, not with guns or intimidation, but with rules. He drafted the new Vescari Logistics Code of Conduct. It was not a press release. It was a binding, notarized document, copies of which were sent to the United States Attorney's Office and to the Longshoremen's Union. It was 2 sentences long. Vescari Logistics has a zero-tolerance policy for the transportation of narcotics, illegal weapons, or human trafficking. Any employee, contractor, or partner found in violation will be terminated and reported to federal authorities. Adriano Vescari, I heard, had moved permanently to the Miami office. He could not stand to watch what he called the sanitization of the family. Mateo's second act was more personal. He used his private funds to establish the Noah Hart Scholarship for Port Professionals. It was a full-ride scholarship administered by the Community Fund for young men and women from Jersey City with a specific outreach to those on the autism spectrum. It funded degrees in logistics, maritime law, and systems engineering. He was not just cleaning his house, he was seeding the future of the entire port with people who, like Noah, knew how to listen for the right patterns. Our life settled into a new kind of normal, a strange, beautiful rhythm of boardroom meetings and quiet kitchens. On Friday nights, when I could, I still went back to the Hudson Diner. Sal, the manager, always saved me the last booth, the one where Mateo had sat. I would sit there for an hour, drinking the bad, burnt coffee, just listening. The fluorescent light still buzzed in B-flat. The compressor still kicked on every 12 minutes. It It was my baseline. It was my anchor. Sometimes, Mateo would join me. He would slide into the booth, looking impossibly elegant and out of place in his perfect suit, and order a black coffee he would not drink. He would not talk about logistics. He would not talk about Malenko, who was still a ghost, a story to frighten rookies, but who had never reappeared. He would just sit with me. We would listen to the familiar sounds of the diner. One night, late in the fall, the wind was howling off the Hudson, a cold, sharp sound that promised the return of winter. We were walking home from the diner, the streets empty. I shivered, pulling my thin jacket tighter. Mateo stopped on the sidewalk. Without a word, he took off his own heavy wool coat. "Mateo, do not," I said. "You will freeze." "I do not get cold," he lied, draping the heavy coat over my shoulders. It was huge on me. It fell almost to my knees, enveloping me in the scent of wool and cold night air, and him. It was heavy. It was warm. I remembered that first night, hiding behind his car. This coat had been a shield. I slid my arms into the sleeves and pulled the lapels closed. I did not need a shield anymore. He put his arm around me, pulling me against his side. The coat was a shared warmth now, not a defense. We walked home, two partners, under the watchful, quiet lights of a city we had fought for. We were safe. We had kept it that way. We had been married for almost a year. The city, for the first time in my life, felt stable. Harbor Safe was no longer the bleeding, controversial entity I had inherited. It was, to the shock of every financial analyst on Wall Street, a success. Our stock, the one that had cratered after my 2,000-unit recall, had quadrupled in value. Harrison and the old guard investors were silent, wealthy, and secretly furious that ethics had turned out to be so profitable. Carmen Soto was now our chief operating officer, running the day-to-day logistics of the company with a terrifying, beautiful precision. Ethan Park, his remediation period long over, had earned his title as our chief technical officer. He led a team of developers, including my brother Noah, who was now his star intern. They were not building new cages. They were building better alarm systems. My life was a rhythm. Board meetings, budget projections, and, on Friday nights, my ritual. I was in my office, a space that overlooked the harbor, the lights of the container ships like slow-moving stars. Mateo was in a late meeting, finalizing a new union contract for Viscari Logistics. I put on the bone conduction rig. It was no longer a tool of war. It was my stethoscope. I patched into the Harbor Watch main feed, and I listened. I listened to the baseline, the familiar, deep thrum of the ships, the high, clean buzz of our new, secure, harbor-safe beacons, the distant rumble of the turnpike. The city was breathing. Everything was in its right place. Until it was not. It was faint. So faint. I thought at first it was an error in the recording. It was a subsonic ripple, a vibration so low it was below the threshold of human hearing, a sound I felt in my jawbone before my ears could even process it. It was hidden, masked perfectly by the engine noise of a municipal sanitation truck on its nightly route. The sound was a pattern, not the 3-2 pulse. This was new, a complex, repeating code. It was not ours. My blood did not just run cold, it froze. I sat, rigid in my chair, for a full minute. The sound was gone, vanished with the truck. I spent the next 48-hour hunting it. I did not sleep. I lived in the audio feed, using the new triangulation software Ethan had designed. The signal was a ghost. It only broadcast for seconds at a time, and only when shielded by another, larger sound, a subway car rumbling underground, a construction crew's generator, a garbage truck. It was smart. It was evasive. It was alive. On the third day, I found its source. It was not one source. It was a network, a new, parasitic network, latching onto the city's own infrastructure. I called the only 3 people I trusted. We met in the Harbor Safe War Room, the room that was now soundproofed and secure. Mateo, Carmen, Ethan. I put the sound on the main speakers, amplified and filtered. It was a low, throbbing, sickening pulse. Ethan Park went white. He did not just recognize the sound, he recognized the signature. "That is my code," he whispered, his voice trembling. That is the original Presidium architecture, the one I built before everything." "Malenko," Matteo said. His voice was flat, containing a cold fury I had not heard in a year. "He is back," I said. "He has found a new developer, or forced an old one. He's rebuilding his shadow network. But he is not at the port. He's too smart for that. He's in the city itself." I brought up the map on the main screen. Red nodes pulsed in the darkness. He's using public infrastructure, traffic light control boxes, power substations, sanitation department servers. He's creating his blind spots in the one place we are not allowed to monitor. "The city," Carmen said, her eyes narrowing. "We secured the port. We secured Vascari Logistics. We never secured the city." The old Matteo, the one I had met in the diner, would have called Luca. He would have sent a team. Adriano, from his exile in Miami, would have demanded a war. Matteo Vascari, my husband, my partner, looked at me. He did not move. He was waiting. He was honoring our agreement, no veto power. My call. "We do not touch him," I said, my voice as steady as the pulse on the screen. "We do not send Luca. We do not make a single phone call. We do not use Vascari assets. If we go after him ourselves, we become criminals. We become exactly what he is. We do this the clean way, the only way." "So what do?" Ethan asked. "We hand him to them, Benny," I said. I looked at Carmen. "Call your contact at the United States Attorney's Office, the clean one, the one who took down Presidium, and call your contact at Homeland Security. We are going to set the trap, and they are going to be the ones to spring it." The meeting took place in a secure federal building, a room with no windows and thick concrete walls. It was me, Carmen, and Assistant United States Attorney Jensen. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "Victor Malenko," he said, after I played him the audio. "The one that got away. We have been hunting him for a year. We heard rumors he was in Eastern Europe." "He is not," I said. "He is here, and he is active. He's using a third-party shell company," Carmen added, sliding a file across the table. "Metro Utility Solution. They won a city maintenance contract for infrastructure upgrades 2 months ago." "How do you know this?" Jensen asked, his eyes fixed on me. "Because he is using their hardware," I said. "His network is routing all its data through a single physical server, and that server is located in a warehouse they are leasing in Queens." "We cannot just hit the warehouse, Madam Chair," Jensen said, using my formal title. "I appreciate the intel, but Malenko is a ghost. He will not be there. We will kick in the door, seize a server, and he will vanish for another year. We will have cut off one tentacle, but the animal will survive." "He will be there," I said. Jensen leaned forward. "How can you be sure?" "Because he is arrogant," I said. "He thinks we cannot hear him. He thinks the city is stupid, and he thinks Harbor Safe is just a public relations campaign. We are going to use his arrogance against him. We are going to make him feel so safe. He will have no choice but to be there." "How?" I nodded to Carmen. She took over. "Miss Vascari and her team have a proposal. We believe Malenko is using this warehouse as his central hub, his new refrigerated truck. He's likely meeting his key lieutenants there, demonstrating his new system. We are going to use the Harbor Safe network to ensure that meeting is not disturbed." Ethan Park, who had been waiting outside, was brought in. He was no longer the trembling boy. He was a confident engineer. "Mr. Jensen," Ethan said, "Malenko is building a network to create blind spots. We are going to use our clean network to build a containment field around his blind spot for the next 24 hours. Starting at your signal, Harbor Safe will push a low-level, wide-spectrum interference pattern across the entire 5 boroughs." "Interference?" Jensen asked, confused. "White noise," I clarified. Digital static. It will subtly disrupt all non-essential beacon and network traffic. It will make the entire city loud. Except for a 6-block radius around Malenko's warehouse, that area will be an island of perfect, clean signal. His network will be the only one in the entire city that works perfectly. He will think he is invisible. He will think his technology has beaten ours. He will feel safe. He will call his partners. He will bring his most sensitive data. He will walk right into your trap. Jensen stared at us, a slow smile spreading across his face. You are not just giving me a target. You are building me a cage. We call it an acoustic containment field, I said. He will walk in, you will be waiting, and he will never, ever hear you coming. We were not there. We were not allowed to be. This was a federal operation. Matteo and I were in our apartment. Luca was with my mother and Noah, an unspoken just in case. Carmen and Ethan were at the Harbor Safe Command Center, their hands on the switch, coordinating with the federal strike team. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, a single text from Jensen. Field is active. I closed my eyes. I put on the bone conduction rig, patched into the city feed. It was beautiful. I could hear the soft digital hush of Ethan's interference pattern, a sound that no one else in the city could detect. It was a blanket of clean static, covering everything. And in the middle of it, just as we had planned, was a 6-block hole of perfect, crystalline silence, the hole where the monster was hiding. He is there, I whispered to Matteo. He was sitting beside me on the sofa, his hand resting on my knee. He did not say anything. He just watched my face. We waited. The clock on the wall seemed to be moving backward 1 hour, 2. At 3:17 in the morning, my phone buzzed again. I picked it up, a new text from Jensen. Package is secure, team is clear, no shots fired, he never even saw us. Thank you, Madam Chair. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for more than a year. I showed the text to Matteo. He did not cheer. He did not smile. He simply reached out and pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my hair. I could feel the tension drain out of his shoulders, a year's worth of guarded waiting, of protecting me, finally releasing. The ghost was gone. The last shadow from the diner was finally in a cage. We had won, and we had done it without firing a single bullet. The arrest of Victor Malenko was the final, silent domino. It was not a press story. It was a sealed federal indictment, but it sent a shockwave through City Hall. Presidium had been a rogue corporation, Malenko had been a ghost, but Metro Utility Solutions was a city contractor. They had been vetted, and they had almost handed the keys to the city's infrastructure to a terrorist. They were terrified. A month later, I stood before the New York City Council, in their chamber. I was not there as a witness. I was there as an expert, as Eliza Viscari, the chairperson of Harbor Safe. You were lucky. I told the room of politicians. My voice was clear and did not shake. You were lucky we were listening. This cannot happen again. The age of move fast and break things is over. You must be accountable for the technology you invite into our city. Carmen had drafted the ordinance. We called it the Responsible Technology Oversight Ordinance. It was simple, and it was brutal. Any corporation, from a global giant to a 2-person startup, that wished to install any network technology on city property beacons, sensors, cameras, anything had to submit to 2 non-negotiable conditions. First, a mandatory, independent security and ethics audit, not by their own auditors, but by a new independent commission. Second, all data collected on public land or from public infrastructure was, by default, public data. It could not be owned, sold, or monetized by the corporation. It belonged to the people. And who, a councilman from Queens asked, his voice skeptical, is going to fund this new army of auditors, this commission? We will, I said. The room went silent. Harbor Safe will provide the initial $5 million grant to establish the commission. We will fund its operation for the first 3 years. The councilman stood up. So you will control it. This is just a power grab. No, I said, my voice cutting through his. We will fund it. We will not sit on the commission. We will not have a vote. We will not appoint a single member. And we will not own the data. In fact, I looked at all of them. HarborSafe will be the first company to submit to a full audit under the new rules. We believe that safety is not a proprietary product. It is a public right. We are not interested in owning the city. We are interested in keeping it safe. The ordinance passed unanimously. The last loophole was sealed. The last shadow was gone. We'd not just cleaned the port, we'd cleaned the city. The bad sounds, the ones that lived in the dark and hurt people, were finally, truly gone. 18 months, 1.5 years since Viktor Malenko had been put in a federal cage, and since the Responsible Technology Oversight Ordinance had been signed into law. The world had not stopped turning, but it was turning on a new, cleaner axis. I was no longer Madam Chair. The board, guided by Carmen Soto's relentless drive for structural integrity, had insisted on a formal promotion. I was now the Chief Executive Officer of HarborSafe. It was a title that still felt strange, heavy in my mouth. Harrison and the last of the old guard investors had finally, quietly, sold their shares. The company was mine, ours. It belonged to the community, to the unions, and to a mission. I sat in my office, the one that overlooked the harbor, the late afternoon sun painting the container ships in gold. On my desk was the 18-month impact report. It was the physical proof of everything we had done. I read the numbers, and they still made my throat tighten. In the 18 months since the implementation of Harbor Watch and the new ethical ordinance, our platform, combined with our federal partners, had directly assisted in the rescue of 1,042 individuals from forced labor and acute exploitation. 1,042 people, an entire lifetime of souls. The port director, a man who had once viewed us as a hostile corporate entity, had provided his own data, the official Missing Persons at Port Index, a metric that had long been a hushed embarrassment for the city, had decreased by 62%. We had not just found the victims, we had stopped them from disappearing in the first place. But the rescues were only the first step. The second half of the report detailed the work of the Eliza and Matteo Vescari Community Fund. It was now the largest reintegration program on the East Coast. The fund provided secure, anonymous housing. It provided trauma counseling and comprehensive legal services. Run by a pro bono team Carmen oversaw, it provided job training, using Vescari logistics facilities and the Noah Hart Scholarship recipients as tutors. I traced the final, incredible number with my finger. 40% of the victims we had helped rescue, people who had been broken, trafficked, and treated as cargo, had been placed in secure, legal employment. They were not just survivors, they were citizens again. The trust we had fought for, the trust I had bled money to earn, had solidified into a new foundation for the city. Sal, the union president, along with the heads of the 10 largest shipping lines companies that had once been Vescari's bitter rivals, had signed the first Safe Port Pledge. It was a binding agreement that tied their labor contracts to HarborSafe's ethical protocols. They had, in effect, made our standards the law of the harbor. 2 weeks ago, the mayor of New York City had accepted a national award for ethical technological innovation. He had accepted it in the name of the city, but he had read 2 names from the podium, mine and Matteo's. I closed the report. The work was not done. It would never be done. But the machine was built. The bad sounds were silent. I left the office, taking the elevator down to the street. Luca was waiting, as he always was. He was no longer just my security. He was my chief of staff, an organizational genius who ran my schedule with the same silent precision he had once used to clear a room. "The boss is waiting by the river," he said, holding the door open. "I know," I said. "You can go home. Luca, see your family." He almost smiled. "See you in the morning, Chief." I walked the 3 blocks to the waterfront, the place where Matteo and I had signed our first true contract. The air was cool. carrying the scent of the river and the distant, familiar smell of exhaust from the highway. He was there, leaning against the railing, watching the water. He was not the mafia boss I had met in the diner. He was not the coiled predator. He was just Matteo, my husband. I stood beside him, slipping my hand into his. He did not turn, but he wrapped his fingers around mine, pulling our joined hands into the pocket of his coat. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of Jersey City glitter across the water. The city was still loud. It would always be loud. It was the sound of life. I could hear the rumble of the subway deep beneath our feet. I could hear the distant cry of a siren, a real one this time, responding to a real emergency. I could hear the layered, complex hum of a million air conditioners, a million conversations, a million lives being lived in the light. I could still, in my memory, hear the faint B-flat buzz of the broken light in the Hudson Diner. These were the good noises, the sounds of a city that was alive, chaotic, and functioning. The other sounds, the secret, parasitic sounds, were gone. The 3-2 pulse of an ambush, the subsonic evil ripple of a network built to hunt people, the white noise screech of an erasure. They had been identified. They had been called out. They had been silenced. I leaned my head against Matteo's shoulder, his wool coat rough against my cheek. He put his arm around me, pulling me closer. The city was spread out before us, a vast, noisy, beautiful thing, and it was safe. "We keep it this way," Matteo said, his voice a low rumble in his chest, echoing the thought in my own mind. I smiled, closing my eyes. "We keep it this way." Thank you all for listening to this story. I am curious. Where are you tuning in from? Please comment below, share your thoughts, and let us connect. I invite you to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories. Please like this video and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by many more people.